When my father, Dr. Ryland Carreri, was emeritus in Bethany College, he was asked to introduce Gerald Ford. And he said, "Everybody knows Gerald Ford. Maybe I should introduce myself first." Um, it's very difficult, even impossible, to answer Pittsburgh and Penis Gaber because all they do is lie and lie and lie. And they have this layered cake of abominable fraud stacked on fraud. And in that layer cake are seasonings of stories of abominable fraud and the consequences to an innocent person of their abominable fraud. So the way sound mental health operates and operated towards me is one of the most sickening stories of peer abuse you can possibly conceptualize. What I was doing was appealing to Amnesty International because I liked my poetry and I couldn't go to school because I was deaf. I was washing dishes. But I thought I knew a lot about the arts of the artists I was talking to who were from Amnesty International. And they evidently got together with Hollywood and Reagan and said he doesn't understand what it means to be tortured. As a matter of fact, I do know what it was like to be tortured. I was kidnapped, held hostage, and abominably tortured and mutilated and left deaf for life and neurologically impaired in a terrorism attack authored by what appears to have been the Democratic Party and their alliance in the Israelis is just a little boy. And that's the truth of the matter. So they said, no, that's not true. Wouldn't it was true. And we'll torture him to teach him his manners so that he doesn't take torture lightly. And so they tortured a victim of torture for reporting torture. And they've never stopped keeping me under deranged military surveillance, threatening my loved ones, threatening me, poaching, poisoning me in the mouth, monitoring my communications, tampering with my ability to record my journalism, and spy camming me in the home, making seedy stories up about me without addressing what really happened in any meaningful way whatsoever. And part of this happened because when I was in college, I dared to object to murders in Central America committed by genuine Gestapo creeps. And the Latin American Studies program had already marked me for the local lunatics crowd. And Carnegie Mellon University was well aware that I had been tortured was going to be tortured for reporting being tortured. And they used sarcasm extrusion to brighten up the situation by impinging a persona on the hostage. And it got very deviant and ugly and began to involve all sorts of international networks. My father's legacy as an educator was being cast in a nude light by his murderers, and as a patriarchal mountebank glowered Bill Gates' UW dialectical. Well, the challenge came to be you better shut your mouth if you can't control the global narrative. It turns out that I agree with the multipolar ambassador mindset that one individual doesn't control the global narrative from the West. So, but it's preposterous to think that a person who's been cheated of an education by near total deafness and has been washing dishes should pipe down about issues of innocent children being killed by a rapacious military machine that just wants to sell more weapons and is hell-bent on Echo's side, which is what I was saying. But they said, then shut up. And it's literally ridiculous that you impinge all of this hostility on an honest man's so-called persona. Biden is defending people who used a nerve agent on his own people. My father had a chest of medals from World War II. And they use a nerve agent on me. And he's defending them. It's not like I don't have a case, but they won't represent me. They say, the terrorists have the right to terrorize you. Because you dared to say you have a conscience and a soul. So, when it comes to what's going on in Gaza, I suspect a horrifying diversion away from questions about AIDS and COVID and the fact that the military wants to control the world. So they're starting these spark fuses to get everybody fighting so that they can crack down on everybody. I think that's what's going on. It's a cahooters situation. Now, I have remarked, and I will remark again, and I will explain this remark, that I do not believe that what Hamas did is relevant to the discussion concerning what the United States needs to make clear to Israel. Okay? I do not believe that what Hamas did is relevant to what the United States needs to make clear to Israel for the following reasons. Well, I know there are some people who support Palestinian resistance, and I admire them. They're valorous, spirited people who understand the history and the cruelty and the occupational mentality of Israel's brutal and horrific occupation of the Palestinian people, which has been noted again and again and again and again and again. I know there are some people who believe supporting those things is good, and I've never heard anybody say that what Hamas did was justified, but by getting behind Palestinian resistance to oppression, which is largely an expression of media oppression. Their side isn't shown. Their spokespeople aren't allowed to talk. Their children aren't allowed to play by the fence. They get shot. The journalists aren't allowed to report. They get shot. Outside people are intimidated and terrorized. I know that for a fact because it has been done to me by the Israelis in the United States. And then they're terrorized again by saying Abdul will disguise his voice on KDKA. And, do you think Hamas would like you, queerball? Hamas would hate you, queerball. You are the walrus of liberal humanism, and so on. They never stop with their intimidation song and dance. But the reason I don't think what Hamas did is relevant to the discussion is very simple. Nobody supports what Hamas did. Nobody was in on what Hamas did. I certainly don't. I have a theory based on the fact that it's reported that the rave was moved, that the IDF was slow responding like Uvalde, and that in the crossfire they were indiscriminate about even killing, some testimony, they participated in bloodbath. Now, I do not know. It's hard to find respectable reports. My heart goes out to the Israelis who've been suffering. They're civilians. But I have seen the nightmare growing where Israel is indiscriminately bombing. There is no shortage of children who have been burned by phosphorus, who have been given shrapnel wounds, have been decapitated by bombs, residential buildings falling and falling and falling, hospitals being bombed, churches being bombed, and is IDF representatives saying that the civilians are the enemy. This is criminally insane. And I know that the United States warmongers like to sell their weapons. I saw what they did to Southeast Asia. And I remember Kent State. I know that these people are horrific poachers when it comes to it's the innocent citizens of conscience, even in the United States. So we're not far from a day when they're going to say a poet who writes about irises and Buddhists is a terrorist because he had qualms about the bombing of civilians in Gaza. Because they start sneering at looking at the Houthis on that. And they make up the story that, I mean, I've been alone for 35 years because they declared me an empty set. They wanted to use me for an experiment in libertinage. And they started subjecting the persona to successive degradations of the X motive. That's what they said. In cold blood, in broad daylight, that's what they said. Subject the persona to successive degradations of the X motive. They brutally tortured me as a child and demanded that I surrender my morals to them, which they then used a feedback loop to suffer me blackmail from pedophiles who were criminally insane, and at large, and being encouraged by Yoko Ono. I don't think that these issues aren't interrelated. They are interrelated. If what Hamas did is in some way relevant because they did it for the United States, I didn't know about it. I didn't hear about it. It's not me who did it. But Israel is bombing civilians indiscriminately, supposedly with the blessings of the United States of America. That's in my name. You're killing these children who are coming up on the screen and saying, you're doing this for me. You aren't doing this for me. Is it some sort of cock and bull show from the Trumpy that someone who looks at pornography is killing children? So we'll give you a genocide of children so you know what you're doing when you look at pornography? That's news. That's very interesting. And Seattle, Washington, the pervert capital of the West, is in on that. Oh, that's news. That's interesting. I'm afraid that's extraordinary. What a brilliant, brilliant man Netanya Houdini must be.